Welcome to another edition of Greenbelt in Focus, a public affairs program produced by Greenbelt Access Television. If it's happening in Greenbelt, we'll put it into focus. In this edition, Konrad Herling talks to John Pfeifer of the Prince George's County Memorial Library System to discuss their donor engagement and grant programs.
Okay, now we're very pleased to have John Pfeifer. He is the Prince George's County Library Systems Donor Engagement and Grants Officer. And this is going to provide us kind of like what goes on, what's the interconnection between this library and with the county. And let me just ask just a broad question. What for you, if you could describe briefly in less than 40 words, what your job description is, and then the connection between your operation and the Greenbelt Library, if that's doable.
All right, 41 words isn't going to work.
Fire away.
Well, my job is to find funding to support the library system, whether that be shortfalls because of a lack of county or state funding, or finding funding for programs that are either broad and system-wide or unique to a particular area or branch.
And what's the sense that you get any changes at the legislative level in Annapolis in terms of perhaps greater funding, or does it look like we're pretty much going to be at the same level?
Yeah, the vast majority of our funding will come through the county, and then the state also provides some funding. And a group of us were in Annapolis last month for Library Lobbying Day.
How did that go?
I think it's called something other than
Yes.
Library Lobbying Day, but
Right.
that's what it was.
Right.
And good. You meet with a lot of chiefs of staff, and you know we had a couple conversations with delegates, and I think our success sort of mirrors the relationships that our branch people and our area directors have built with their local elected officials. And in areas where we might have had a little bit more turnover, then there's not much of a relationship, and you go call on people and you can lobby them and you can ask them to do favors for us, but without the relationship, like anything else in life, relationship is the key.
Yeah. And how many libraries does the county system have?
We have 19 branch libraries when they're all open and functioning. There's several that are under construction right now. The Surratt's Clinton branch has been closed for going on 2 years as we basically it was stripped down to the walls and then rebuilt the entirety of the inside, and a few supply chain delays there and in Bladensburg, but I think those are solved.
And then Bowie, several years ago, it's a new library, correct?
The South Bowie branch, we had our 10th birthday party there last October, and I think we referred to our South Bowie branch as the oldest of our new branches.
Gotcha.
Sort of when we sort of went to a little more wide open layout, made people feel more at home, and there's also a transition from just printed materials to digital materials, something that was obviously increased dramatically during the pandemic, first when we were closed, and even as we're reopening, that shift from physical materials to digital materials has been significant.
Right, and since now we're virtually now all open,
Yes.
has that situation then, because the libraries are now open, then required you to, then we have to rehire or hire new folks?
I think it's a constant state of evaluating what the needs are, not just sort of globally across 19 branches in very different parts of the county. The county is 500 square miles, and what works at one branch doesn't always work at the other. And some, our Baden branch, for instance, very rural area, Brandywine area of the county. Our smallest library, 2,500 square feet, and we're about to move across the courtyard there to a former medical office, and we're going to double our square footage to 5,000 square feet. Doubling our square footage, of course, sounds like a great thing, but 5,000 square feet is still on the very, 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 very low end of the size of most of our branch libraries.
And then working with libraries, such as the Greenbelt Library, what have been the challenges, what have been the positives in terms of the interaction and, where personnel feels, the county is listening to us, and sometimes the question about what it is that people want to be listened to about, it could be about structural changes within the facility itself. What are some of the challenges that you're going through now?
Yeah, in the first, I've been on the job now for 8 months, so I'm still relatively new to the position and to sort of what the library system and what the library foundation that supports the library system is all about. But I think in the first 3 months, I got out to every single branch. Other than the one that we have inside the county correctional facility. The good news is I have not been there yet, either on purpose or accidentally, so everything is good there. But I think when you have a limited budget, there's a tendency to want to do things globally, and I don't want to say force a sameness on things, and certainly there are economies of scale. When you're doing programming or other things, and you try to sort of push it across, but when you're in a Baden or a Mount Rainier where there are 3 employees, or when you're in Hyattsville or Laurel or Oxon Hills that has 30,000 square feet and maybe 15 employees working at a particular time, it's difficult to have the sameness. So I tried to get to know the areas a little bit. Greenbelt actually personally has I have history not with Greenbelt but with Greendale, Wisconsin, one of the three communities. I was born and raised in the Milwaukee area, and while I was in college, I covered school board meetings. I have a journalism degree, so I covered school board meetings in Greendale when I was in school. So I sort of have this affinity for Greenbelt that sort of doesn't go away. And the first time I came here, I sort of looked around, and it felt like Greendale, Wisconsin feels. It has that same sort of post-World War II plain community.
Like Sandy Barnes and others that have been very involved with the history of Greenbelt, as well as the other two. And there are folks that have taken the trips and so forth. And I've seen films, and you probably have as well, providing the contrast. Because some of them have retained a lot of the older characteristics, and some have kind of broken away more so. But then as a kid, because I can tell you, I've been in Greenbelt since I was 10 months old. So I've seen, lots of changes and so forth. But that sense of connectivity. And of course the libraries are such an important part of that.
So in the 8 months or so, I've written grants, federal grants, state grants, county supplemental grants. Actually, last week we were notified of, I guess personally in the 8 months I've been here, is sort of the biggest success. We were informed by the Federal Communications Commission that we'll be the recipient of a $500,000 grant to support the Affordable Connectivity Program. This is a program which allows us to go out into neighborhoods throughout the county and sign up people for a $30 a month credit on their home internet and a $100 a one-time reduction in cost of a smart device. And
I know I'm really glad to hear that because my career was working as a broadcast analyst at the FCC.
All right.
And one of the parallel to what you've just described, like my supervisor I know went to southwestern the United States, areas where there was a fairly significant population of Native Americans and Latin Americans, and so often that the just the basic, gee, I cannot pick up the internet here, I cannot receive the connections that you would have and so forth, and then addressing that. So that's good to hear that there is this grant now from the commission that then helps you.
Yeah. So no, our
That's great.
challenge, of course, is to push that through people in the branches and through connections that we've made in the communities with schools, civic groups, churches, and anyone who will help us host one of these sign-up info sessions over the course of the next 2 years. We'll want to partner with them.
And it's even also significant in that the demographics of Prince George's County have been changing quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think that about 20% of the population of Prince George's County is Hispanic, for example.
Right.
And if you go back, 20 years ago, maybe 1.3%.
Yeah. So at the same time I've been doing this, sort of, I guess you would call macro things, I've been trying to get out, and I met, I think sometime before Christmas here with Kevin Simpson, the economic development director here in Greenbelt, to have sort of a preliminary discussion on funding opportunities that might become available through the city. At a similar conversation with John King, who's in the same position in the city of Bowie, and actually submitted a budget request in Bowie for some materials and things that we need in those two branches. And now here in Greenbelt, that the sort of next round of ARPA funding will be available for not-for-profits.
And just for folks listening, I used to have that acronym.
It's sort of the America Relief Act. There's a P in there somewhere.
Right.
But this is basically federal funds that were allocated sort of really in the first 12 months following,
that the city has been working
and that got pushed to states and the cities to sort of implement it to help organizations who had been impacted by the pandemic.
And there are things that are happening here in Greenbelt that are potentially beneficial to the other branches and vice versa. Things that like another branch is doing, and gee, we can do that also, in Mount Rainier or Riverdale or wherever it might be.
Yeah, we are in the midst of working on, when we open our Bladensburg branch, which has been under construction for a little over a year and should open some point in 2023, we will house in that new facility what we're calling a social justice incubator. Now, what social justice means in this day and age can range greatly, and we'll probably have to define that. But as part of that, in Hyattsville, we have the Prince George's Room. In our Oxon Hill branch, we have our Sojourner Truth Room. And here in Greenbelt, we have the Tugwell Room, which is they're all repository of historical artifacts and documents.
And what really is amazing when we talk about the Tugwell Room, I'm fortunate enough to be on the Reparations Commission here in Greenbelt. And I recall, one of the publications that was there, like a magazine, that type of format, but it had history went back to the 30s and 40s and so forth. And also, the whole question of interracial relations and so forth.
We're going to, we just received some private funding to do an oral history project having to do with social justice and the city of Bladensburg, but it'll push out because the equipment that we're going to get to help us do oral history projects is going to be available here in Greenbelt, Oxon Hill, and Hyattsville as well, to sort of talk about those things. Let's talk to people who's in racial groups and socioeconomic groups and ethnic groups that history has ignored for the large part up until now, because history to some extent has been written by people who look a lot like you and I do, and we want to make sure that we're giving a voice to people, and that oral history project is going to be a great opportunity to do
and
that.
I'm glad, because of course in other areas of the country it's almost, I don't know if it's a 180-degree turn the other way, but moving in that kind of direction. And it's based, I think, to some extent on a fear that people will have a negative reaction, be it, the kids in the schools and so forth, feeling differently or challenged. But it is something where, for example, this Chief Justice of the South Carolina Supreme Court during Reconstruction was black.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the majority or a good number of the members of that court were also African American. Those are the kinds of things that can also, number one, enlighten everyone, and then also give a sense of hope about what can be as well. So I'm glad to see that kind of moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, there are more questions and so forth, but there'll be hopefully maybe other opportunities.
Great.
Again, want to thank Greenbelt Access Television for providing this opportunity, and it is part of a series of programs called Greenbelt in Focus, where we are hoping to enlighten other folks about what other organizations are doing, opportunities for involvement, and at the same time, kind of a sense of direction, and a direction where people can be brought together. So we thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Konrad. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. This concludes this program of Greenbelt in Focus. It is a program that is directed towards our organizations in town, and also an opportunity for people to see an opportunity to get involved with the organizations. There are so many folks that, particularly now that we're kind of going through, rebirth may not be the appropriate term, but there is an opportunity now, pretty much post-COVID, for people to say, gee, I've always wanted to join that organization. Now is the time to do that. And the purpose of these Greenbelt in Focus programs is to enlighten folks and to give folks a sense of what it is that they might want to join. What can I get out of it? What can I give to it? And together, what can I give to the community? So again, we thank John. We thank you so very much for being part of this. Thanks very much.